The Colombian Exchange represents one of history's most significant population disasters. That is the bad part, and one of the bad parts. But again, with different fruits and animals and vegetables and things coming over, new things are formed and things go back. And remember, after the Middle Ages, when we get to the Renaissance, and right now we're about to start enlightening ourselves, populations begin to rebound. And now that we have more food and different food, it's going to help populations grow even more, especially when we get to Europe. But then, knowing that history has a sense of humor, ironically, one of the staples that makes it back to the old world, makes it back to Europe, will feed a country and help a country survive until it eventually causes a famine and those people leave and come to America. So, it's all connected, people. It's all there. Questions, comments, observations, always raise your hand and ask. Here are basically, this is just showing you where we went. All right, at the southern part of the country are the Spanish, coming down around the Ohio River Valley and the Mississippi River are the French, then the English and Dutch landing on the coast. Oh, and a little French spot right here and in Texas. I did not know that. That's kind of cool. But by and large, English, Dutch, some Swedes. Remember, Sweden for a while was a legit baller country. All right. Amerindian depopulation created huge open spaces because of the disease, because of the impact of diseases. Land was there. And also, and some of you may know this, the whole concept of land ownership was not part of their culture, especially in the United States. In North American natives, they saw themselves as stewards of the land, keeping it safe so that next generations have it. So when the British, mainly, or the Dutch came to them with trunks full of stuff for land, they're like, yeah, okay, it's not mine anyway. I'll take your trunk of stuff. And at first, it wasn't that big a deal, but the English kept wanting more and more and more. And taking all that land took away food. That's the first thing that the Native Americans feel is the loss of their gain, of the ability to provide for their families, not the land, because land is just where you get your resources. You have to remember, too, that in Jamestown, those weren't farmers that came over. Those were people who wanted to get wicked rich and be like Spain. They're middle-class, bougie people who didn't want to work and didn't want to farm. And so instead of farming, they went and stole Native American food. And it wasn't until John Smith did not marry Pocahontas, threatened to kill people, that they started to farm. So England, anyway. So here you go, Colombian Exchange. Dogs, llamas, and turkeys. Go to Europe. We have the dog. Yes. And the llama, an animal of no practical value, other than losing their groove. Anyway. Sorry. But look at all the stuff we got. Cattle, chickens, dogs, goats, horses, sheep, and pigs. Lamb. Just don't tell me how you got it. All right. There used to be horses over here. They came over on the bridge, the whole whatever, and then they died off. So you have new horses. We also got diseases like chickenpox, influenza, malaria, measles, smallpox, yellow fever. That came over here. A lot of STDs made their way to Europe. Bananas, which were essential, citrus fruit, coffee, sugar cane. Again, think about this. Without the Colombian Exchange, these crops aren't introduced. So sugarcane is not introduced to Brazil. Sugarcane is not introduced to the Caribbean. Tobacco will not eventually be introduced to the Americas. And oh, by the way, you know what else should be on this list? From historical significance, American historical significance.
Slaves.
No, as far as plants, dear. All right, I'm pointing to the board. You can't see it. As far as plants go,
Tobacco.
that's on here. And tobacco was already here.
Is it marijuana?
Weed.
Okay, one, that worries me. Two, no, what is the most important crop in the history of the United States? No, it's not tobacco, Mary Gilbert.
Corn?
No,
Cotton.
cotton, thank you. Yes, it is. Historically significant is cotton. Changed my mind. I got another one. Okay, all right. So, because without cotton and without sugarcane, then yes, Mary, is there a need for slavery? No. Those sugarcane is very hard to grow, and it grows in horrible climates because that's what it likes. So people died a lot working on sugar plantations. Tobacco first, and then cotton need lots of land to be profitable. So you need hands. And tobacco is horrible for the soil. And this is before we have, fertilizers and nitrogen and all that kind of stuff. And southern plantation farmers were not about to crop rotate and they could make a lot of money. So you needed lots of land for that too. Lots of land means lots of hands. Lots of hands means paying indentured servants, but they can be free after 7 years. And so why don't we just get people who can't be free? All right. Anyway, animals and food, absolutely. Oh, it's the pilgrims, which is anybody on a religious journey, not people with those hats. That's not a pilgrim hat, that's a Puritan hat. Colombian Exchange saw a sharing of New World and Old World crops and livestock with enormous impacts. See, why is that not a good answer? What should be there? Instead of enormous impacts, what should you say, AP students?
Like the specific impacts that it had?
Yes, list the actual impacts. Excellent. You guys would be racking up points today if we were having competition. All right. And they impact the entire world. That's not hyperbolic, but there might be some truth to that. And again, these are all, this is a statement that you can either prove or refute with evidence. Every statement can be an argument so long as you provide evidence. If you don't provide evidence, you're Fox and MSNBC or Reddit. Okay. And then there is the textbook picture. It's in every world history textbook of the Colombian Exchange. So there you go. One thing I used to do is have people map their favorite meal. So where do the five major ingredients of your favorite meal come from? All of you who like anything that has to do with flour have to thank the Egyptians. Okay, and where there's wheat. Okay, so here we go. New World: potatoes, maize, corn, tomatoes, tobacco, peanuts, vanilla, chocolate, beans, peppers, turkeys were introduced to the Old World. So when we think of vanilla, where is the best vanilla in the world grown right now? Anybody know? Where most
Isn't it
vanilla?
like Africa? Like Madagascar?
Madagascar, which is where the lemurs live, right? It's on the east coast of Africa. Campbell, you're just going to have to deal with it. I'm a dad. It's dad jokes. It's Disney and Pixar references for life. Remember, all in this together. Okay. Now the song is in your head. Okay. But vanilla was a New World thing. Chocolate. The Belgians make wicked good chocolate. Actually, everybody outside America makes better chocolate, in my opinion. I think American chocolate is grainy. Eat a Cadbury, and eat a Hershey. There's just different textures. Like Belgian, it's just like I don't know. I'm sure Lindt is an American company, but that's the best chocolate. And to me. All right. Actually, there's really no such thing as bad chocolate. Okay.
So when they have like the ads, like the chef, like whisking.
Yeah. All right. Am I going the right way? Uh-oh, this looks serious. New crops, especially corn and potatoes, revolutionized Afro-Eurasian diets. And again, oh my gosh, like I said earlier, food, heavy carb. Well, by the way, corn is not a vegetable. Corn and potatoes are both starches. Corn is a starch. And makes good tortillas. Leading to unprecedented population growth. How much you want to bet this is a painting of an Irish family? Just going out on a limb here. All right. Oh, nice shoes. Wait, what the heck? Okay. It comes back again. Don't pay no attention to me. I'm just trying to do this. Okay, there's that. Oh, it does come back. Okay. Old world crops, like coffee, sugar, wheat, rice, grapes were introduced to the New World. Rice was the second crop grown in the Carolinas. The first was indigo, which is where you get your blue clothing. And then rice. If you go down to Georgetown, Charleston, or Brook Green Gardens, if you go back in Pawleys Island, there are locks where they would flood the paddies. They're still there and they're still operational. So we grew rice. Then tobacco, and you can thank Pocahontas' husband for that. And then cotton. All right. Thank you, Africa and Sumatra, for coffee. Thank you. Amerindian diet had little meat. There were very few domesticated animals. So if you ate meat, it was typically fish or wild, but cows, pigs, sheep, goats, chickens, all introduced from the old world. There's a book. There's lots of books, but there's a book in particular that I have started reading 3 times, and I will read it before summer this year. Things have just come up. I find it interesting, but called Sapiens. And it argues, and there are others that argue, that the worst thing to ever happen to mankind was the agricultural revolution, was actual farming. And we can talk about that. I'll just leave that up. All right. Wait, no. Yeah, okay. All right. Europeans introduced horses to the Western Hemisphere, transforming the Amerindian societies, made hunting easier, leading to more food. So now their populations are going to grow. And so again, the land that they don't think they own, they're going to require so that they can go get food to feed their people. But they're over here. But the English and the French and the Spanish from here are going to encroach on them, leading to them behaving the way they do. All right. Cash crops and forced labor. So now we're there. We have exchanged things Colombianly. We have made our stand. We have land. We are in Charleston. We are in Jamestown. We are in Plymouth. Spanish are in St. Augustine, which is the oldest settlement in North America, United States of America. We're in Mexico and Central America. We're up in the Hudson Valley, in the Ohio River Valley. The Russians are in Alaska. So we're all over the place. Now we need to make money, because remember, everybody living here came from here and owes allegiance to some ruler over here, and that ruler wants money. This goes back to mercantilism. I now have a factory. Basically, I have an agricultural factory. I can grow what I need, to sell to the rest of the world or to sell to my people to make money. So what will grow and make me the most cash crop, and how can I grow it? Forced labor. That's a very idyllic picture. Spanish focused on gold. The Portuguese found success growing crops within the enormous American lands in the tropics. Brazil. Okay, I'm sure they went looking for gold as well, and I'm sure, had the Spanish not found it, actually they found more silver than anything else, but had they not found these things, it may have forced them to look at other ways to make money. Necessity forces behavior. Portuguese said, look, we got land here. We have a climate suitable for growing stuff. Let's grow stuff. Okay. We'll back up. Okay, this is a sugar plantation, a sugar cane mill. Again, they have natives working on it right now. American sugarcane production, along with tobacco, coffee, and cacao, became enormously profitable. Again, how profitable? How much money did it bring to Europe? Again, here's something else just to think about. When the paper calls for it, when an answer calls for it, like if you have a chart that tells you how much money how much revenue was earned based on a crop over so many years, and you say it was enormously profitable, that's not a good answer when the chart gives you actual dollar amounts. But if you say because of this, it was enormously successful, and there's no data, then that's true. So that's okay. But when given the opportunity to be accurate, always be accurate. Plantation farming required a large labor force, and with the Indians dying of disease and running away because they knew where to hide and fighting back, it wasn't just dying of disease, there was resistance. There's always resistance. The American slaves resisted. It wasn't like they said, okay, yes, master. They resisted. They resisted physically, they resisted violently, but they also resisted passive-aggressively. Harvest a little slower. And the same thing happens when we get into industrialization. Oops, this machine's broken down. Can't work today. Horses are sick or something happened that you can sabotage and you can resist in other ways. The Amerindians were not a viable source. One, because there weren't a lot of them left. Two and three, because they resisted and they knew the land and they hid. It's also resistance. So you got to get somebody who won't die, who doesn't know where they are. I mean, you think about all the things, all the reasons that slaves from Africa were successful. The fact that this isn't Africa, I think is underreported and underappreciated. Like, they have no idea where they are, how it works. I mean, literally, they have no idea where they are. The Colombian Exchange also included the exchange of humans. Europeans entered the New World willingly, and Africans were forced as slaves. Also worth noting, most Africans who were slaves did not come to here. Only 5% of African slaves came to the United States. It's also important to know that the way this worked was that Africans sold Africans to Europeans. In the beginning stages of this, we were not running in there throwing nets and running down slaves, Africans. Pull into an African slave port, the leader comes out and says, you can have these people. And they're either criminals, the mentally inferred, the physically limited, or prisoners. Basically, they got rid of all their problems. Eventually, they have to go further and further, or further and further and further into Africa to find slaves. Because remember, one of the things they get for slaves are weapons. And so there are cultures and literal civilizations that we have never known about because they've been wiped off the face of the earth in an effort to be sold into slavery by other Africans. Here's just a picture of the slave trade. Coffee, tea, cotton, sugar, mining, and rice. And you can kind of see where everything is. Up there's your cotton, and there's rice. I told you there was rice. Mining on the coast here. This is silver. 5 million slaves here, 500,000 slaves there. 0.2, 0.5, 4.5 million. So there you go. And that's where most of them came from. There's a movie called Amistad, which talks about, which is a really good movie about a ship called the Amistad. It's a slave ship. And it talks about the slave coast and a slave port and all those things, and life on a slave ship and things like that. So it's interesting. It's got, who's the actor? Well, Matthew McConaughey, but it's got an actual actor in it too. He was in Gladiator, and he was not also Pro. He was in Gladiator, he was in Blood Diamond. Anyway, transatlantic slave trade was a direct result of profitability. Remember, to make money, you try to limit the cost of production. The cost of production of resources. Well, we're now here in the Americas with the sugar, with the tobacco, with the rice, with everything. We have it. We'll grow it. So buying the product, we don't have to do anymore. We have the land. We need labor. And I can pay for labor once in buying the slaves and then shipping them over, or I can pay wages. This is free labor. Costs go down, profit goes up. You're the king of England. You want profits. Again, this just shows you 90% of slaves brought to the Caribbean islands and South America, especially, were people of African descent, and they remain the majority today. So think about that as well. Most people of most African Americans, or most African people living in the Americas, are a byproduct of the slave trade. There were none of them here, as best I understand it, prior to the slave trade. So we've had all sorts of just biological changes in the Western Hemisphere because of slavery. Yes, slaves went to other places, and yes, you'll hear people talk about how the Muslims had slaves, and you guys all talked about the Janissaries, the children that they took in the Ottoman Empire to serve as slaves in the army. Yes, as long as there have been people, just ask Moses, there's been slaves. But we're talking about this because we're moved on to the New World. We've moved on to Europe. We know that there are still slaves from the east coast of Africa going to the Muslim empires. And we know that China and Russia has serfdom. Russia will have serfs until the 1860s. We know that, but we're just talking about this now. This does not mean it stopped there. It just means that we're just talking about this. Sorry, that's one of those things. You won't have the need for so much slave labor in Europe because there's not the kind of gross, huge farmland, gross by large, that there is in the Americas. There were slaves in every single colony in the United States, all 13. But the northern ones outlawed it because it just didn't make economic sense. Not because they had a love for their fellow man, but because it didn't make money. Well, I'm sure some did. Sorry, that's an oversimplification. But Portuguese called slaves engines or engenhos. But I'm not pronouncing that right. I can't speak Portuguese. But conditions, hard work, long hours, poor food, shelter, heat, led to a high mortality rate. And it's funny, I've said this for years, that the slave was the southern factory. Despite loss of population, millions since the New World, African populations still grew because of the food. Again, in a cruel, ironic twist, because of the food coming back to the old world, to Africa, the population continued to grow, even though they were losing so many people to being sold into slavery.
Like a guy?
What?
It's like a guy that's tied up and is about to act.
Yeah, he's probably resisting, so they're gonna deal with it.
Jeez.
All right. There's nothing pretty about this institution. Okay. whoops. The Portuguese success in cash crops grown for money, led other countries to do the same thing. All right. How much is left? All right, we'll stop there. Tomorrow we'll pick up there and go into 4.4. We would cover a little more ground, but I enjoyed the sleep. I enjoyed the breakup conversation. There it is. Thank you all. Enjoy your lunch. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Stop recording.